I wanted to start with a bit of a different sort of approach and not talk about so much a platform, but your own personal background, because it's quite interesting. You don't come from a technical background, you're not a developer, you don't come from a typical corporate background. You actually studied law and worked in journalism. So how did that transform into running an online platform? It kind of seems two very different things.
So that comes to my personal story. The interesting part is that me not studying computer science is actually being a rebel. I'm a daughter of an electrical engineer. I have 2 sisters and a brother. My oldest sister went to study computer science. She has a PhD in computer science. She was a lecturer, worked in high tech, and then my older brother went to study computer science, become a software engineer, and he's working as a programmer in a tech company. And then I said, no way, I'm not following the boring path, and I went to study anything that doesn't have numbers in it except for page numbers. So I studied law and journalism. And here I am working in tech, so I guess you can't really escape your destiny. But I think people should follow whatever I'm a true believer in academia and in studying things. I think anything you're studying is expanding your knowledge about the world, and it teaches you how to learn yourself about more things. So I have no regrets about what I learned.
And do you think, my personal background is kind of similar to yours. I studied bachelor politics. I also ended up in tech, but I'd say it's kind of more atypical. Do you think it's more important to study software engineering, or do you think people should follow more their passions and then one day think, okay, well, maybe one day I'll think about how I can link my passion to actually maybe an online platform or a business that might come out in the future? What would you suggest to people if you're in two minds, say?
I think, first of all, it's very clear that everyone should follow their passion. That's the number one thing that everyone should do in their lives. I think there is a problem when you're 18 and you decide what to study. And a lot of people think, especially in the generation of our parents, they think it bounds you to the rest of your life. But I kind of knew that I'm just going to study whatever I like to study now and do whatever I want, I'm a millennial, so we study what we're passionate about, and we do. I never felt limited by what I studied. So I did become a lawyer after studying law, especially because I have a Jewish mother. So if I already have the degree, so go do the internship. If you already did the internship, go do the bar exams. So I am a lawyer, but I was pretty sure I'm not going to work as a corporate lawyer somewhere. It's just not me. But I think that everything that I learned, I used in many things that I did a lot of things in my life. So I did work in tech before, and I've been the CEO of the Jimmy Wales Foundation for the past 4 years. And what we do there, I have a master's in human rights law, so what I do there is implementing that in protecting bloggers and social media users that get persecuted for speaking out online. It's for freedom of expression online. And I feel that everything that I learned and all the experience I have, I can implement in many directions, in many ways. And obviously my degree in journalism helps me now with my startup that is a journalism startup, basically. So I don't think anyone should have those calculations of what you should study in order to be an entrepreneur someday. You can be an entrepreneur with any background. You don't even have to have an academic degree. When we hire people, we don't really care about that. Just be creative, and follow your passion. People are best when they're doing what they're passionate about.
So basically, people shouldn't study coding at all then?
If they're passionate about coding, they should study coding. I don't feel I missed that particularly in what I'm doing right now. I did have to learn a lot of disciplines that I didn't study. When you're an entrepreneur, when you're starting a startup, you're starting a company, anything, you learn that you have to have some knowledge in accountant and some knowledge in law and some knowledge in tech and some knowledge in almost anything. I was lucky enough to co-found this great startup with Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, and he has a lot of this knowledge and experience in a lot of places where I didn't have this experience. So I learned a lot from him. That's my life school, learning from doing. So you practically need to keep your mind open and to study yourself and sit down. I mean, I did find myself sitting down and learning things myself from the internet, from books, so I can handle, all the things you need to know, how in business development and so on. I mean, there are so many things you need to know. So I think those gaps are filled with experience and a lot of hard work.
Always hard work. It seems to be the common thread.
It's always hard work, but fun. I mean, if you're passionate about it, you don't feel like, oh, I need to learn that. You're passionate about knowing more things about the world and getting more traits and developing your skills. I am excited about that.
So everyone knows what Wikipedia is, founded by Jimmy Wales originally. Wikitribune, which is what you founded in Jimmy Wales, relatively new platform, if I'm honest, April 2017. Some of us might be familiar with it. What is it, and what was the insight that led you to create this platform?
Okay, so Jimmy and I, as I said, we've been working together on the Jimmy Wales Foundation for the past 4 years. We've been friends for about a decade, so we have a long time together. And then a lot of political changes happen around the world that all of us are aware of. Trump winning and then Brexit, and we both are living in London right now. And we felt beyond the specific political decisions that people took, that people based their decision on a lot of false information that was circulated online. And I felt that, both of us felt that it harms democracy, because the basic idea of democracy for people to take a vote and to influence what's going on is based on the fact that they know what's going on, that they have access to the real facts. And they didn't, that there was so much information that wasn't true that was circulated, a lot of propaganda, and people didn't have trust in the media. So many times, a lot of media outlets tried to expose the lies that were circulated, but people didn't trust the media. So they said, okay, so The Guardian says that, and CNN says that, and Fox News says something else. I don't know who to trust. And Jimmy got a lot of people coming to him saying, I don't trust the media. If I watch CNN, I know the kind of bias I'm going to get. If I watch Fox News, I know the kind of bias that they're going to bring me. So what I do is usually I go to Wikipedia and check what the facts are. Just bring me the facts. And we decided that Wikipedia is not exactly the correct destination for that, because bottom line, it's an encyclopedia. It's not going to cover everything that's happening. It's not covering the news. It's covering only information that has some historical value to it. And we thought that that's exactly what's missing today, to have a collaborative initiative like Wikipedia, but applying that on news.
So what happens? So I post a news story, for example, and then, like Wikipedia, do lots of people go in and contribute? So, for example, if I say, okay, I'm in Barcelona, there's been a demonstration for independence, and I say this happened, will then people sort of go in and validate what I say? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so everyone can edit everything, everyone has access to everything, and the collaboration, the way you see it in Wikipedia as well, helps the community clear all the bias around it. There is a very known discussion on Wikipedia on the security fence in Israel. They actually couldn't even agree the title of the entry because it was so controversial. But there was a long discussion on the talk page about, is it an apartheid wall or a security fence and so on, until they reached some kind of as neutral as possible solution that they agreed on. And I think that's the beauty of the internet, and that's something that is much harder to get in a traditional news outlet. When you collaborating with so many people, they can help you get, again, neutrality is problematic in news, because when you tell a story, it's always biased in some way, the language that you use and how you, and what you're covering and so on. But the more people you have collaborating on it, and the more transparent it is, the more trust people have in it, and the more unbiased and neutral it can become because of this collaboration. There are many differences from the Wikipedia, of course, but one of the main things is that we decided to start with journalists, hire journalists, and not just to generate content, but to serve the community in the professional background. Let's say if the community needs an interview with a political figure, it's much harder for just a community member to, raise or get the connections to do that. But a professional journalist can do that, so that's why we had. And also, if there's a fire in Grenfell Tower, we can tell our volunteers, go cover the story. But we do have the journalists where we can actually do that.
And how do you, so that's really interesting, and actually it's a question which I guess relates to Wikipedia as well. And we saw in the US elections, like the influence of essentially the Russian news agency, Russia research agency, essentially millions and millions of sort of Russian money going into the US election, and the use of Twitter bots online was sort of a big story at the time. Could that model of disrupting a platform not just be applied to people who kind of go and edit the Wikitribune content to essentially push it strongly in one way of bias? So, could you have the Russian bot equivalent coming to sort of disrupt your articles and the sort of non-bias you have? How do you mitigate for that not happening?
First of all, I hope we will be able to identify it as a bot. I think that, especially on Twitter, once you know how to look for them, it's not that hard to get to those bots, especially because they usually have a lot of different users posting exactly the same tweets. So you kind of know it's a bot. I'm pretty sure you can create a software doing that automatically, but a bot cleaning the bots. I think our community is geeky enough and knowledgeable enough to locate a bot. So I think we're pretty safe there.
Well, not just bots, I guess kind of
influence.
For foreign agents, essentially. I mean, in the UK, in Brexit, I've done research myself. It's sort of looking into the issue. So there's kind of bots, but then you also have, what we call cyborgs, so partly automated, then partly humans sort of doing the intervention at the same time. So bots are perhaps easier, but what if you, for example, have 100 people sort of recruited at once, real people to go in and say, actually, this story, let's make it how we want it to be. Has that happened to you yet, or not so much?
It hasn't happened to us yet. That's why we have some rules about how, in Wikipedia as well, you have to have reliable sources. So you can't have a source of a fake website where that's the only article on that website saying exactly what the Russian spy or whomever is trying to write. So as long as you're following, it's actually, we didn't invent that, as long as you're following journalistic guidelines of verifying facts, then I don't think there is a problem. And I think it's easier with us because we are clearing everything that's trying, at least, to clear anything that's not a fact. So a lot of people, and we had some discussion with journalists about that, where they feel that part of their role is to tell a story, an interesting story. But what Jimmy and I have in mind is just bring me the facts. I don't need the whole story. I mean, I don't care if the news story is going to be dry with only the facts, because that's what I want to get. Just give me reliable facts about what happened. Not the interpretation of the journalists about what I need to think. I mean, I'm fed by media that is telling me what to think.
Yeah, I think we all are, right?
Yeah, just communicate the facts with me, and I'm not the only one. I think everyone is intelligent enough to interpret it, and I'm for every person to interpret it as the way they like. It's not a right wing or a left wing thing. But as long as we all agree on facts, and facts are facts, so you can't really
What
play
about
with
alternative
them.
facts?
That's why it's easy to collaborate on them.
What about alternative facts?
Alternative facts? Well, we don't believe in alternative facts in Wikitribune.
Well, I can see 300 million people here, can't you? I mean, so talking about volunteers, how do you become a volunteer? Because one of the things, or how do you recruit? Because looking at more specifically sort of Wikipedia, it's been around for a while. It's a similar model. I'm amazed how many people contribute to good quality content. How do you get those people? And can everyone here today go in and become part of the community?
Everyone here is welcome to go to wikitribune.com and sign up. That's the easiest ever. We now launched, like a few weeks ago, the Discord channel. There is a link on our website, which has been amazing. If you want to chat with me after that. So
what's the website? What's the web address?
Discord. So we used to be on Slack, and then we realized that our community feels like it's work. And we don't want them to feel like it's work. So we're geeky hipsters going to a gaming kind of Slack. It's a gaming chatting platform. And it went like that. We have so many community members chatting with us on fact-checking, on articles, on news, on random things. You should check it out. It's really great. I'll tell you about a struggle that we have because we just had, I don't know if you saw that, Jimmy and I published a letter, I think 2 weeks ago, about big changes that we've done with our staff. We actually let go of our journalism staff. Not permanently, we are going to hire new journalists, but for now we want to focus more on our community. For your question of how would we? I remember the first years of Wikipedia. It was highly unreliable, and you didn't really have a lot of volunteers. It took years to build Wikipedia the way it is today.
So it's a long process then?
It's a long process. You need a lot of people to be passionate about it. And we are working on creating our community, and we're learning from the Wikipedia experience with us. Actually, there is a really interesting story about both Wikipedia and Wikitribune. When Jimmy started, and I don't know how many of you know this story, but when Jimmy started Wikipedia, he had this idea of creating an online encyclopedia free for all. That was his main idea. The first 2 years, he was working on something that was called Newpedia. A Newpedia was created by hiring highly educated professors and academia researchers that had to send their credentials, and they had like a 7-step process of being approved to write an article on the encyclopedia, because that's the way encyclopedia were written back then, like 15 years ago. How old is Wikipedia? And that's the way it was originally created. After 2 years paying for professional academia scholars, Newpedia had 24 entries, and some of them actually were revealed to be plagiarism. So it was really bad. And after 2 years of investing in it, and of course it didn't take off, so Jimmy said, okay, hold on. And that's a point that I know there are a lot of entrepreneurs around here. A lot of startups get to this stuck moment where you need to decide, are you starting over or trying to fix what exists? But Jimmy bravely decided to ditch everything he's done in the previous 2 years and start Wikipedia. And that was a super brave step, not only because he practically dropped off everything that he's done for 2 years, but also because he decided to open it to anyone, which is crazy. It's like your conclusion by paying highly educated people for 2 years is to let anyone edit the encyclopedia. But, everyone told him it's crazy. I think people still, they're telling us we're crazy. So it worked, I think.
Well, you've got to be crazy to try and change the world, right?
It changed the world, and it worked, and you need courage, and you need to believe in your vision. So the reason why I'm saying that about Wikitribune is because, strangely enough, we follow the same exactly the same path. So for the first year and a half of Wikitribune, we built a Nupedia. We hired a very highly experienced editor that had extensive experience in Reuters, and really, really amazing, an amazing professional. And he actually built our professional team of journalists. And then when you went to wikitribune.com, you were seeing any other news website. It looked just like CNN or any other. It looked very pretty. Every story had the byline of the journalist. So you did have an edit button hidden somewhere. But our community actually felt really uncomfortable editing the stories. They didn't feel, first of all, they didn't feel like confident enough to start their own stories because they felt like, wait, I need to sit down and write a whole story, a whole news story. That's too much. Like, you're a volunteer, you don't really want to work for it. But also, they felt really uncomfortable developing the existing story of the journalists. We actually had the bio of the journalist at the bottom. So if you had the bio of the writer of a Wikipedia entry, you wouldn't feel comfortable editing his work. You feel like you're stepping in a professional work of someone, right? And that's what happened to us. And people felt that unless it's a typo that they can correct and no one is going to say anything, they felt uncomfortable,
so is it
changing
just kind
anything.
Of seeming like
what happened was that on
yeah.
our talk page, and we have a talk page just like in Wikipedia, people said, can I flag something to you? Maybe that needs to be changed. And that's not a wiki. A true wiki encourages everyone to just go and edit yourself. That's what we want. We want it to be a collaborative work where everyone can edit everything. And so at some point after a year and a half, Jamie and I sat down and said, okay, let's rethink everything. It's not working I mean, it was working, but it's not what we wished for. It's not our vision. It looks like any other website, and when we talk to our community, they feel uncomfortable editing. That's exactly, like they feel like they need authorization of our journalists, and that wasn't the reason why we had journalists in the first place. So the first step we took is me again, and you're talking about my background. I actually redesigned the website. I'm not a web designer. I think that if you go, you see it's not perfect. Actually, someone told me it's really ugly on Twitter, and I'm like, okay, well, the point wasn't to make it pretty. The point is to make it a wiki. So what I did is actually cleaning any feature that looks like other news website. It looks more like a Reddit than a news website, which is the fact that I wanted. And everything has an edit button on it. Everything. It's a title and edit, title and edit. And then when you go to the website, you immediately knows what is expected from you. You are expected to edit. You're not expected to read nice stories, because nice stories you have anywhere on the website. That doesn't change the news. It doesn't fight fake news. It doesn't do everything that we wanted. It doesn't create the community that we wanted to create around news. And it actually worked, and it sparked collaboration. A lot of people felt more comfortable to take part and to engage with the stories. And the next step was, and that was much harder, was to let go of the journalists. Because we do want to let go of our Nupedia and start a wiki. So that's what we're now. We're now a Wikitribune, finally. And we're working very hard on making our community stronger and working together. And we encourage them to write on whatever. I mean, you don't have to write. And we actually encourage them not to write about another tweet of Trump. Stop doing that. It's overdone on the news. Just write on whatever, on gaming, on I don't know. And our luck is obviously Jimmy, and he has so much experience, especially with the community. And I personally, because of my human rights background, I'm particularly eager to make our community as diverse as possible. To incorporate as many people from different backgrounds and more women.
Well, that was going to say, so I think in the US, but certainly in the UK, for example, so only 7% of journalists went to private school, but they occupied 50% of mainstream media. Likewise,
Sounds like
likewise
London.
women are massively underrepresented. So I was going to ask, how do you address that problem to try and get that kind of more of an equal balance or reflection of society?
It's very important to us. So we had, she actually left recently, but our head of programmers, the head of digital, was an amazing woman named Natalia. And when we hired, I actually had on my list the gender, because it was important to me to get to equality. Now when we are mostly programmers, it's harder. So if you're a female programmer, I would love to get your CV. It's just literally harder to get female programmers. My older sister is not free, but right now. But yeah, I mean, you just need to be conscious about it. That's the first step. I think a lot of places, they just find themselves with a majority of men, like we literally at some point found ourselves. So you need to be conscious about it, and not only gender, but also bringing people from different backgrounds. That's why we're not that particular about education, because a lot of people don't have the privilege of getting good education. It doesn't mean they're not talented and they can't contribute. So we don't stress the things that are influenced by your background and your privileges when we hire, and especially not in our community. I think that a lot of the news is very West-centric, and that's another problem. I mean, if we talk more about Trump's tweets than on what's going on in Syria or in Africa or in Philippines, that's a problem, because there should be some balance. A lot of times I was asked if we're going to translate our stories to foreign languages, and I said, no, we're going to bring journalists or community members from foreign countries to write their stories, and we'll translate those to English so our crowd can actually learn about what's going on in other places. That's much more important.
Right, so we've got 2 minutes left.
Oh, no.
I'm going to ask you one question that I think is actually sort of relevant to startups and tech, well, actually entrepreneurs more generally. It's like, you have your content, how do you actually then get people to read it beyond your existing community? And that, I think that's relevant for any industry, actually. How do you essentially distribute it and get it seen by the world?
So right now, what we're focusing on is getting people to write, not to read. Our main focus is to get our community bigger and more involved and more diverse. So it's more important. I mean, when we're having our metrics checked, it's not about the amount of clicks, it's the amount of clicks on edits. And that's what I mentioned earlier. We check how many people edit and what kind of edits they do. That's much more important to us, and that's what differentiates us from any other news outlet. And we didn't speak a lot about it, but I mean, I think the reason why we're going to bring back the trust in journalism is because everything is so transparent and collaborative. When you're a part of it, you don't feel like there's something happening in this newsroom that you're not aware of, and then you get just a story. Everything is transparent from day one, from the first line of the story. So you can see the process, you can see the sources, you can change, you can be a part of it, and then you can trust it because nothing is hidden.
All right, well, we've got 1 minute. I'm going to ask you one more question.
Yes, make it good.
So in the world of fake news today, what can we here today, everyone here, what can we do personally to try and fight the fake news that's sort of happening on a daily basis?
If it's too good or too bad to be true, it probably is. That's what I have to say, especially with clickbait headlines. Just check it a little bit further. I think that 99% of fake news is very easy to locate, very, very easy. You don't need to be an expert. If you click on the story and you see it's a website that has nothing beyond this story, or you see it's ridiculous, or you have all those, 7 vegetables that are going to kill you and stuff like that. I mean, you kind of know that. Or if it's completely ridiculous and you can't see any known, publication behind it. So I just be wary. Don't believe anything that you see, and be wary double if it looks suspicious, if it looks too tempting for you to share.
Okay, well, on that note, you've got 10 seconds left. So thank you so much. I could honestly speak to you all day. I find it fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And
we'll
please,
all come and join the platform.
Come to Discord and come to Wikitribune.com. We'll welcome all of you. Thank you.